the video, and I'm Ayushi. I'm going to help you learn about social media marketing, right? So welcome to Youvah. Today we are going to talk about something which is very interesting and one of the very key components of social media marketing, which is your content creation. Now, whenever we talk about content creation, generally, sometimes when I have interacted with students as well, they say that it feels very overwhelming. At the very starting of the phase, at the very starting of the month, they're able to create content, right? But when it reaches the hit of the second month or the third month, they lose out on their creativity, they lose out on their ideas, right? So I'll make sure that it doesn't happen with you and your clients, right? So you're always will be fully packed with your ideas. And I'm also going to tell you that how do you optimize this content creation process itself, right? Because when I worked in an agency, we had multiple clients that used to come into our agency, and we cannot devote every single day in creating content for every single client and then posting it on the same day. It's going to get very hectic. You won't be able to do that, and also it hampers with other creative works also, because social media is not the only thing that you do for a client. It's digital marketing, a very broad spectrum. It's the SEO that also comes into picture, other things also that comes into the picture as well, right? So we are going to learn everything one by one, that what are the key pillars, what are the key things, what are the key ingredients that you need to create a content calendar within few hours, and with ChatGPT I think within few minutes as well. All right, so let's move ahead with it. Firstly, if I talk about, you hear me say content calendar a lot, right? Let me first tell you what a content calendar is. Content calendar is basically a calendar, right, which is fully scheduled as to at what particular date, what is the content that you will be posting, what exactly the timeline of that would be, right, and what exactly would it contain, right? So every single detail in the very planned order is something which is a content calendar, right? Now, why do you do that particular process? To optimize your work, obviously, because as I said that as an agency you will be working with lots and lots of clients, and you cannot afford this particular thing that every single day you will be just working for a piece of client, and just you will be working with a piece of content. You won't be able to do that, right? So that is when content calendars comes into picture, which is going to help you with this particular thing. All right, so it includes lots and lots of things. It could include promotional posts, your advertisements, it could include lots and lots of things over there. So we're going to look everything in detail one by one. All right, then comes your content pillar. So content pillar is something that how do I say it? So it's a bucket, right? So let's say a very broader topics that you choose for your content, right? We're going to look at some examples as well, but these are the very key pillars of your content. So if your buckets are fixed, right, then whatever the content that you will be pouring out will be just actually pouring in, that you will be pouring in those buckets itself, right? It will fall in those buckets, right? So those are the pillars that you need to build for your content, right? Now, this is usually the different kind of content types are like infographics, questions of the days, quick tips, branded graphics, your blog post. All these things contains all these details, right? We are going to look at one by one, but before we look at those details, I'm going to help you learn this through an example. That how do you figure out a pillar, what are the different ways to look at a pillar, right? And how do you move for that particular strategy, right? So the first thing is that you have to know is your industry, right? Here I have taken up an example of a nutritionist, right? Now, nutritionist on a very broader spectrum falls into a category of health and industry, like it's the health and fitness industry it falls into, right? So if I have to imagine, okay, if there is a nutritionist, imagine what is the work she is doing. She's consulting people, right? She's consulting people regarding what? In terms of health, right? Then what? In terms of exercises as well, that do these exercises, right? She's educating people also regarding these things, right? She is motivating them also to stick to that particular diet, stick to the resolution they made, right? It's also, she's talking about mental health also and the impact of it on the nutritionist as well, right? Probably someone might be stressing out and binge eating, and then they went to a nutritionist or something. That could be anything for that matter. So these are the usual topics that somebody might be discussing, right? And if you look at the broader category also, it falls into health and fitness, right? All this particular thing. So nutritionist, if you cannot think that what does a nutritionist do, right? If you're not able to list out 5 or 6 things of what a particular person would do, then figure out the industry, right? After you figure out the industry, think that what usually happen in that industry, right? So in health and fitness, what usually happens? Education of the particular topic happens, motivation, exercises, food habits, and mental health. All these things will only happen there, right? Now once you're thorough with all these things, what you have to make sure is that you're ready with your content pillars. So those the buckets are ready for you. Now you're going to put content type over there, right? And every content type can be multiplied n number of times, right? So I'm going to help you learn what are different content types that are there, right? So let's say there are 5 content pillars that you have. For every 5 content pillars, there are 33 different content types, and every content type can have thousands and thousands of your content, right, where you could be posting about, right? So you're going to learn everything through an example, so you will be very clear to you, right? So first is a this versus that post. Now what is a this versus that post? This versus that post is something where you make a comparison between two things. Whenever you're scrolling through Instagram, whenever you're scrolling through any sort of social media platforms, it's very obvious that you might have come across this kind of content where people are comparing two things, right? Possibly talking about advantages or benefits of one or the other, or possibly just just ranting about it, right? But a comparison does happens, right? So this versus that post talks about that. Now imagine, as a nutritionist, if I have to think, okay, in this versus that category, as a nutritionist, what you can make. So as a nutritionist, in this versus that category, I can compare veg food and non-veg food. I can compare 2 sources of protein as saying that which is the best source of protein. I can compare 2 different kind of fasting with one another, right? See, 3 content is ready just with 1 pillar, right? 1 pillar and 1 content type, all sorted, right? So now ABCD post. Now what is an ABCD post? ABCD post is basically you talk about 4 things at a time, right? Now those 4 things doesn't have to be pros and cons. It could be anything. It could be just you highlighting the products as well, right? So just randomly you're talking about 4 different things, right? Or just putting up a picture of that. That is what a ABCD post would be. All right. Then if you move further ahead into it, then there is something. If you move further ahead into it, there is something called as testimonials as well, right? So let's say, as a nutritionist, what is my testimonials? Firstly, testimonials is basically the feedback that you get, the Google reviews that you're getting, right? So what is my testimonial in that? The clients who have availed my service, are they satisfied with it or not? If they are satisfied, they might have written something of me, right? So whatever they have written, I would not just guard it and keep it to myself. I am on social media. So what I will do, I'll just share that. As you share it, what is going to happen? Your trust, your credibility in front of all the people that are following increases, because they are now aware that other people are also, consuming your services, right? So if, let's say, they were a little bit hesitant also about your services, they might not be any longer, right? So it's very important that you include testimonials also into your content. Talk about the previous clients that you have served, talk about their experiences as well, because it sort of comforts the other person that, okay, this person has already availed the services, so it's not too risky to take a decision to avail that service, right? Then if I move towards another content type, which is a story post. Now when I talk about business in general, there are different stories every business have. The first story that a business could possibly have is how the business started itself, right? So it could be like, it could have started for a cause, right? So you could mention that cause as well, right? Or the second story could be of a founder, that what is something that helped the founder, or something that helped him make that decision, right? Or possibly the struggles that he has possibly gone through, right? So that could also be a story for that, right? Third story could be, let's say, the customers, right? Because at the end of the company serving a customers, they are the hero of the customer, like they are the hero of their stories as well, right? So what is their story? How are they getting benefit of that? Is the product, is the company started based on their needs or not, right? So that is a story post. Then the fourth picture that comes into my mind is an employee, right? So whenever I talk about employee story, this brand comes into my mind, which is Legit Papad. Wherein what happens, what they've employed thousands and thousands of women, and they take care of the business, right? They are into the manufacturing of papads, right? So that is their story, right? So you have 4 different stories, 4 different narratives. Every employee will have their different topics, every customer will have their different experiences. So imagine the kind of content that you can put out, right? If I talk about sugar cosmetics, it's a general activity that I do. Like, try answering those questions if I ask you right now, and once you answer those questions, let me know that I would never know, but still, let's just try this thing, okay? So let's say if I ask you that how many of you are aware about sugar cosmetics, possibly everybody will be saying yes, that you're aware about it. Now, what is exactly the things that you're aware of, right? And according to the surveys that I've done on lots and lots of people, they're aware about who the founder is. The founder comes on Shark Tank. Okay, fine, done. One thing is done. If I talk about the details of that particular founder or how did the company started, they know that the particular person went to IIM, the particular person went to an IIT. All right. They went there. Then how did the business started? She dropped an 1 crore offer, and then she started her company. One company failed and then another company started. This is the information that everybody knows by heart. Now, how does it happen? It happens through the magic of social media marketing. How does that happen? How does that come into picture? It's because whenever you're posting a story, you have to make sure that you're very consistent with your narrative, right? So if you talk about that, okay, this is your mission, this is your vision, this is your goals and everything, and from every story you're changing your mission, vision and goals, it's not going to work out. You're going to just confuse your audience. What you want is that talk about things multiple times, and they want them to retain that. You want them to know about your brand. You want them to retain that information of your brand and talk about it. All right. So this is something that you can take a leverage of here. Then comes product options. Let's say in nutritionist there is this category doesn't work also, but here what could work is service plans, right? So possibly for 1 month she will be charging this, so you can just list out her, you can just talk about her services, either in a video form, either in an audio form, either it could be just through your clients, either could be just a post, normal single post also, you can do that. Otherwise in product business, so you can just post a picture of your products as well. All right. Then comes a transparency post. Now, what do I mean when I say a transparency post? A lot of things that goes on the back end of a business. For example, right now I'm sitting in Youvah's studio and I'm recording this whole thing, right? Now, this is a behind the scene, right? And what you're seeing is basically the result of what I have recorded. But this is basically the behind the scene that I'm doing. So what a particular company can do, or what a particular brand, or most importantly, you as a social media marketer, what you can do for that particular company is that you can capture those moments. You can just put it out there on internet. Now, what is going to happen if you put those raw moments on internet? What is going to happen is that the person will feel connected to you. The person will get involved into your process, right? Because see, whenever you are selling something for, let's say, a price or something, it's fine, okay? If the price is less, person might buy, if the price is high, they might not end up buying that. But if you're selling an emotion to a particular person, chances are they will always buy it. So make sure that you're involving that particular person also with your business. They should also feel that, okay, they're also growing with your business. They should feel happy with your growth as well. Now, how do you do that? Once you make them feel involved enough, that is when it's going to happen, right? Then talk about your client's experiences, that how was your client experiences, what did they do, and all those things, right? Talk about the brainstorming sessions. If let's say you're working on a very critical important project, any event that is coming up, discussion is happening, record that, post it up, right? You can reveal the prices, you can reveal the locations. If you're starting up a place somewhere, you can just give a whole office tour or something, right? Then comes social media content type, part 7, which is talk about, you're going to list your service in detail, you're going to list your products in detail. Obviously, people are aware about what your product is, but they don't know about it in depth, right? I'm not saying that every single day talk about your product in depth. They would not be interested in knowing about that, honestly. But at least once in 15 days, just to remind that how unique your product is, what is the speciality of your product, you can talk about those things in a very subtle manner as well, right? Even through storytelling you can do that, right? Now this is when ChatGPT comes into picture. Try to write to ChatGPT that, hey ChatGPT, create a fake scenario wherein you're involving my product and you're highlighting the features of it, and you mention the highlighted features of it, and it's going to help you a lot, right? So you can do that things as well. Then comes new launch, new event. So any launch, any event that is coming up, create a hype around it. Don't just, let's say, a launch is coming up 2 months later and you're just posting about it 5 days prior, hey, launch is coming up. No, create a whole hype around that thing. Create a whole content around that thing. Possibly ask person to guess that what is coming up, right? Drop some hints, get in touch with some influencers, get in touch with some collaborations, right? And try to create a hype around those areas. Okay. Then comes highlight somebody. Now this is again like story, like every business have different people to highlight and to tell their stories about. Highlighting works the same manner. You can highlight the 4 people, you can highlight the company, you can highlight the owner, you can highlight the employees, you can highlight the customers, right? So highlight somebody, or you can highlight the services as well, right? So you decide what you want to do. Then comes quick tips and tricks. So as a marketer and everything, and whenever you're posting a content on social media, you might have come across this is a very common post to post, right? Even let's say 5 things to do in 2025 to make your new year better. This is the kind of post that also you might have heard about, right? So what this post are basically termed as, for example, when you're giving tips and tricks, it's called tip and tricks post, right? So you can just mention those things as well. This is also the kind of content that you can generate in nutrition, right? So again, going back to that example of nutrition, what you can do is that, quick tricks to shed 5 kgs, right? Something or the other. Or for example, some quick recipes also that could just be done within 1 second or 2 seconds or 1 minute, whatever it is, right? Then comes frequently asked questions. Now let's say a person is following you and the other person also follows you, and then you address that question again, then few people are also following in, then the question is again being asked. It's difficult for you to respond to it again and again, right? So it's better that if it's a frequently asked question, people are asking it multiple times, clear it out then and there itself, right? That this is what your particular product is all about, this is what the details it entitles. And possibly, let's say, if you don't want to communicate about it multiple times, put it on your story, put it on a highlight, put it on a post, right, where the person can see it at least, right? Then talk about the work culture, talk about the employees also. So talk about the core team as well, right? So let's say let's take an example of Youvah, right? Now sitting at the Youvah room recording this particular video, the team that is helping me record that video, possibly a grateful post for them as well could also work out, right? Another editors, any other people, right, could be thanked in that particular moment, right? What it develops in front of your other audiences is that the company appreciates their employees. The company also in general a very good have a very good environment. All right. Then again thing is trends. So anything that is trendy or something, you can just talk about that as well. So you can mention, let's say, in nutrition also, there are a lot of diet that comes into picture, right? There are a lot of different kind of foods, vegetables, recipes that might comes into picture. Talk about those things, because if those are trendy topics, people might be watching a lot of times and you can take a leverage out of it, right? So you can mention those things as well. Then before and after picture, this works really well into the beauty sector, wherein people can have before and after transformation, and those picture works really well over there. It also works very good with interiors also, right? So that is something that you can talk about, you can talk and explore about. In nutrition example, if I have to give you, a nutritionist can give an example that this client went from a particular number to this particular number. She could do that. Then comes user generated content. It's a content that a user create for you because of the value they have opted out from that, right? Or the value they created out of that, right? So let's say somebody got a very nice jewelry, right, and they liked it, they post about it, so you can post it back as well if they're tagging you, right? So those are user generated content. Then comes comparison posts. These are the comparison posts that you could see over here, right? So this versus that is again one of the types where if you want to compare 3 or 5 6, then you can possibly move with comparison post with details one. Then comes the benefits and the drawbacks one. So here what is going to happen, you're listing out the benefits and the pros and cons of certain different things, right? Then comes common mistakes. So common mistake you as a business might have went through, like for example when you're sitting in 2025, 24 might something went wrong, talk about that. Might good happen, talk about that, right? Talk about quotes and everything. Let's say if you are a founder, you are at a level where you read enough to quote something, or let's say you read enough to speak on a particular topic, right? Then definitely quote some words of yours as well. Okay. Then comes your thoughts. So your thought is basically any sort of like content that is coming into picture that you can mention, right? Any sort of, like, there is no limitations to it. If you feel it's relevant enough, you can post it, right? Then comes special events. So if there is any birthday or something that is coming up, you can possibly move ahead with this particular option. All right, so we're going to learn about that. How do you develop a content calendar actually now? Because you have learned about pillars, you have learned about the types of it. Now it's very important for you to understand that how do you make it using an Excel sheet. If not Excel, how would you make it using Notion, Doc, anything that you would possibly find interesting, right? So there are few columns that you need to have. First one is being date. So you're just gonna write the date of the day that you will be posting the content on, right? So let's say if I have to post Happy New Year content, the 1st of January, this will be the day that is going to come into picture, right? Then comes the content pillar or content type. So content pillar and content type will go into a separate column itself. Content pillar basically talks about that what exactly the column it would fall into. So you already are aware about the 5 content pillars that I told about nutrition. So let's take an example from there itself. Now let's talk about the food habits there, right? So one content pillar was food habits, right? So let's take that content pillar. Now take the content type of this versus that. So in food habit, this versus that content type, you're comparing 2 different varieties of food, right? Or possibly you're comparing 2 different sources of protein. So it could be like you're comparing veg and non-veg food, and then you're talking about, the other thing that you're talking about is protein sources, veg versus non-veg, right? Let's say in the same thing, you took another content pillar, which is basically about your information, right? Because as a nutritionist, you also share an information, right? So in this versus that content type, or let's say in just educative content type, you're talking about 2 different kind of fasting or 2 different kind of routine to actually lose weight, right? So that would be your content type. Then comes the title, right? So what would be the title? The title, let's say for the first one will be which is better, veg versus non-veg, better source of protein, veg versus non-veg, could be anything for that matter, right? So that would be your title of the post that you will be making. Then comes your Instagram post. So in Instagram post, you will be putting an inside information itself, right? Like for example, this versus that you're doing. So some basic facts and figures will be mentioning, right? So it will be basically a carousel post that is going to happen, right? So that inside detail and inside content is going to come into picture. And then comes your caption, where you're going to write that, okay, what exactly it is, right? If to take a hook or something, that you can mention that as well over there. Then another thing is inspirational link. So as an agency, you will be working with multiple peoples and onto very different things, right? So it's very difficult to collaboratively come into consensus with one thing. What you can do is just share your inspirational links there, and whatever it fits for the team and suggestions, they could possibly work on that, right? And then comes your Canva link, wherein, let's say, or not just Canva, any link, any drive, right, wherein a person who is curating that particular post can upload the details, so everything is all together in one sheet, right? Now you have maintained an Excel columns and everything. Now another factor you have to keep in mind is cyclicity of it. Now what do I mean when I say cyclicity? For example, here are different content types. So I cannot be talking about quick tips on day 1, quick tips on day 2, quick tips on day 3. Then my content will be very redundant in nature. I would not like that to happen, right? So what I will make sure there's a cyclicity of all things. One day I possibly might be talking about comparison, one day I'll be talking about tips and tricks, one day I might be talking about emotional aspect of the stories, right? One day it could be a transparency post for me, right? So maintain that cyclicity so the person could also know that okay, they can expect this kind of content from you at that particular day. There's an example that I could give is Prajakta's Tuesdays with Prajakta or something, right? So there's a cyclicity of the content that is also happening in that particular context itself, right? And then what you have to do, you just have to repeat the content type, but your title keeps on changing because you have researching on all those things. Now you can take an example of ChatGPT over here. You can just put your content pillar over there. You can just state the content types that you know, and you can ask them to okay, that this is what my problems are, this is what my content pillars are, usually what is the kind of content my audience would like to see, create a content around it, and it's going to help you with that, right? So that is something that you can explore on, and this is exactly what your sheet is going to look like. Now let me tell you a real example of that particular sheet. So if you can see this particular sheet here, it has all the details. For example, day 1 I'm putting a content pillar of motivation, let's say, right? So I'm writing a quote over there, health is wealth. Then inside content, prioritizing your health, then the hashtags and the links, and then the Canva link, right? Food habits, another content pillar. I'm mentioning quick tips and tricks, prep ideas I'm giving, right? Here is exercise, this versus that, walking versus jogging, mental health, story post, a client transformation, right? You can see that you can create content around it, right? So I did this for 15 days. You can do it for 30 days. You can use your mind to it, or either you can ask ChatGPT to create for it. What I would suggest is that give a very customized input to them, right? So you figure out what is your competitors are talking about it, right? So once you have done your research well as well, and so you give the prompt, it would be more specific in nature. So when you're using AI, also use it very, very smartly. Alright, so this is it for the content pillar and content type. I'm going to see you in the next class. I hope you really loved this class and learned a lot about content type creation. If there's any doubt, please free to ask me. Till then, stay tuned for the next class. Thank you.